Hello, friend. This is Ryan Hicks of TaughtToProfit.com. Today I want to talk to you about looking at all things as an expression of God. First, I want you to go and subscribe to my newsletter. You'll be kept up to date with all the new videos and books I'm coming out with. For example, in a week or two, I'm still working on some editing of it though, but there'll be a book on prayer coming out. How to get your prayers answered, how to pray prayers that get results. And that book will be coming out in the next week or two, and I'll let you know when it is coming out. Make sure to subscribe to the newsletter so you can be kept up to date about that. Many people look around the world and see evil, they see good, but they see things divided from God. But I want you to have a different outlook on life. Now, I got to be very clear and start from the beginning and say, I'm not talking about pantheism, where everything is God. Everything is not God. God is the creator, and then there's the creation. But we can look at all things as being an expression of God. These are things that exist for His reasons, and we can look and honor Him through those things. It doesn't mean that the behaviors of people are creations, are expressions of God, but that they themselves are an expression of God. The trees are an expression of God. Human beings obviously are an expression of God, being in the image and likeness of God. Animals are an expression of God. These are all part of His creativity in His universe that He created. Acts 17:28 says, "For in Him we live and move and have our being, as certain also of your own poets have said, for we are also His offspring." That's powerful when you step back and think about that. For in Him, in God, we live, we move, we have our being. That's simple. This creation is not some byproduct of something else. It's the creation of God. And in Him we live and move and have our being. Everything we see is an expression of God. You may say, well, what about a car? A man built that. But there was a creativity given from God to that man, and obviously a group of men, to create that car, to build it. The natural resources God has put in the earth are being used creatively by men to create new things. These are all divine expressions. These are expressions of God. Revelation 4:11 says, "Thou art worthy, O Lord, to receive glory and honor and power, for Thou hast created all things, and for Thy pleasure they are and were created." This approach to life helps your relationships with people, because you move past behaviors that you don't like, things that annoy you, things that bother you, things that may make you angry, and you see this individual as an expression of God. This individual is a divine expression with a purpose and existence, and for God's pleasure they were created. No longer can you shrug them aside as if they don't matter, they don't have importance, they don't have value. For God's pleasure they are and were created. And just like you, they are His offspring. And just like you, in Him they live and move and have their being. Colossians chapter 1 verses 16 and 17 says this, "For by Him," talking about Jesus, "were all things created that are in heaven and that are on earth, visible and invisible, whether they be thrones or dominions or principalities or powers, all things were created by Him and for Him. And He is before all things, and by Him all things consist." If you will adopt this approach and look at all things as an expression of God, from the leaf on a tree to the individual standing before you, a human being who has been created in the image and likeness of God. Doesn't mean you value them the same, obviously. But the point is, some expressions are better. Obviously, human beings are the most glorious example of an expression of God on this earth because they are in His image and likeness. And the leaf obviously is a shadow of that glory. But nonetheless, these are all expressions of God. God created them. And when you start looking at the world that way, it is as if a light shined upon your path and your entire worldview changes to one of light instead of darkness, doom, and gloom. Many professing Christians and religionists in general have a doom and gloom mentality. Everything's getting worse. Well, no, it's not, but they follow the news and the world's system of belief, which is negativity, dragging things down, making things worse. Things got to be getting worse. They couldn't be any better than they were 10 years ago. It's worse because they don't remember things that happened back then. They only remember some of the good things, so it seems like it was better. But things are getting better. All together, things are getting better in this planet. But when you adopt the mindset that all things are an expression of God, they exist for His purpose, for His reason, for His pleasure. By Him all things consist. And when you start looking at things that way, you can't hate your fellow man. You can't walk in hatred. You can't do anything but love, for God is love. And you get out of this system that's telling you about politics and telling you about bad things going on, and this went on, and this bad thing happened, and that bad thing happened, and if we don't do this, and this, all these bad things are going to... All this negativity, because people are not looking at all things as an expression of God. They're looking for all things being bad. And there's a few little bright lights in the midst of a bunch of bad things. But that's not the world we live in. We live in a world of beauty, of glory. We see God's handiwork from the heavens down to the earth. We see His glory everywhere. All throughout creation we see His glory. From a little seed growing out of the ground, having that knowledge and intelligence in it to become the great mighty tree. From the human being formed in the womb, just a few cells, becomes this great glorious being in the image and likeness of God. From the animal life that constantly show forth His glory, His creativity and uniqueness. And we're finding new animals all the time that we didn't even know existed, that have all kinds of unique characteristics that we never knew were combined into one animal. There are infinite expressions of God all over every day that you see, but you don't see them in that light. You just see things, there's leaves on the ground. Instead of thinking of the glory, the fact that a little seed created that tree that grew to be mighty and then drop its leaves. When you see the little ducks following their mother across a road in a little line, doing what they were divinely created to do, that's an expression of God. We see His creativity in that handiwork there. The intelligence that's in those animals to do the things they need to do to survive and to thrive and to become better and overcome anything that comes their way. There is great beauty out there in the world. It's all an expression of God, not behaviors. So if somebody does something wrong to you, that's not an expression of God. It's not God through them expressing something. The fact they exist, their being, their existence, for His pleasure they are and were created. When you start thinking of things this way, you will have the light which lighteth all men that come into this world, Jesus Christ flowing through you. You'll not be able to look at another man with hatred or anger again. You'll not be able to look at them as this being that's causing you problems anymore. You'll be able to see the light of God in them, that divine spark, where they may not be doing things you approve of right now, but you see them as an expression of God. You can't hate that. And your approach to life will be more gentle, compassionate, and loving. You can't be filled with hate and rage and fear and anger and wrath and all these things when you're viewing the world as an expression of God that has purpose in it to exist, meaning in its existence, importance, value. You won't be able to dismiss another person again as if they don't have value because of whatever social ideas you have that makes one person more valuable than another. I really encourage you to think about this today and see if you can apply this in your life and what it may do for you. I think it'll be a real blessing for you. Like I said, make sure to sign up for my newsletter. I will be announcing that book release. It'll be very, very soon, next week or two. Working on a few little edits and a book cover, and it should be ready in the next week or two. And I think it'll be a real blessing to you. It's going to be about prayer and about how to get your prayer answered and how to pray the right prayers so you're not praying vain repetitions, you're not doing things that are having basically the feeling of your prayer bouncing off the ceiling coming right back to you, as if you're praying to a heaven that's shut up against you. When the reality is God gives you freely all things. And Jesus said, will God the Father not give you good things? He wants to. He's willing to. Ask and you shall receive. And I'm going to teach you how to ask the right way so you can receive each and every time. My friend, I pray this is a blessing for you. May God bless you richly.